What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday as we welcome you into the Trade to Black podcast. Anthony are back from Washington. We're going to dive into our trip, what we learned. We learned a lot of things, a little bit. I know a lot of you are hoping to get some groundbreaking information regarding rescheduling. We do have a little bit of feedback pertaining to that. We learned a lot of stuff about the European market, how the regulatory framework is moving ahead and moving fast. And moment of truth opportunity now for the U.S., because if they don't change things, they're going to be left behind because the EU is moving full steam ahead. With that, let's welcome in AV here on a Thursday. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, how's it going?
And we got some nice little weather in Washington this week, mid-60s. It was nice to get to the nation's capital, wasn't it? All this chaos in the media, and it's like everything is fine.
Great. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it was.
I don't want to say everything was perfect, but it was just.
It was nice. It was nice. It was nice to be. I mean, our hotel was like a mile from the Capitol, so it was nice to get that walk in the morning, and not be sweating my ass off because I'd be doing that in South Florida. Which is why we don't walk anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a pretty eventful 48 hours, including today with the onslaught of rescheduling, I guess, social media posts, I'll call them, coming from a lot of conservative influencers, as well as Mr. Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll dive into all that. It's interesting.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment. And I think a lot of people are probably asking, like, what did we see? What did we hear? And first off, I just want to set the stage. We were there for a summit. It was about the European cannabis, market and what we're seeing, what we're viewing. We did actually attend an event yesterday. It was the former HHS secretary, Kathleen. What's her last name again?
Sebelius.
Yes, along with a gentleman by the name of Marvin Washington that we're going to actually have on tomorrow at 11 a.m. He was actually a really interesting guest to hear what his take was. But Second Chance is, I forget the name of the term, the next month. It's going to take place in
Second
Washington.
Chance month.
Second Chance month.
Yeah. And
he had some interesting things to say on what his views are towards rescheduling and criminal justice. Very good friends with Weldon Angelos. But he seemed very positive about what the Trump administration might do. But some of the things that we did learn is that, first up, like we always hear, Donald Trump would like to get this done for rescheduling. However, as we've said time and time again, there are people within his administration that are apprehensive that don't necessarily want to get it done. So I think you heard that too, Anthony. And I think, how should people interpret that? Is that something that Donald Trump's going to fight and advocate for, or is this something that he's not going to get in the way and he will sign anything that comes across his desk? Like, how do you process that?
I don't think he's going to fight for it, but like we've said, and like what we've seen, Donald's going to get what Donald's going to want. What Donald wants, Donald's going to get. He's not going to fight for cannabis. I think that is just wishful thinking. That being said, a lot of the people that we spoke to on the European side, a lot of people that we spoke to on the U.S. side, everyone understands that from a regulatory perspective, this plane is built. The rescheduling initiative is there. The NPRM is there. The HHS report is there. The OLC memo is there. Safe banking is there. Like, this stuff is literally there to just bring to a floor vote, to sign and get it done. Am I bullish that something's going to happen? I've always thought something was going to happen in 2025. I've also always thought that it's not going to be in the 100-day agenda. We're 67 days in now, roughly into the Trump administration. Didn't expect anything to get done. Things are happening. Sentiment was even keeled. I mean, there's nothing really sensational to report on, but things are moving forward, and the tone and perspective that people were talking about was positive. I mean, there was nothing negative that people thought that, let's say, the rescheduling initiative was derailed or the rescheduling initiative was going to get rolled back. What Secretary and ex-governor of Kansas, Kathleen Sebelius, did say, RFK did the work. HHS did the work. The DEA, it is in their it's their responsibility to defer to the HHS regarding the rescheduling initiative.
Correct.
Now, we know the DEA has been adversarial the entire time. They've made this thing a circus, but we got from the horse's mouth an ex-secretary of the HHS saying it is the DEA's job to defer to the HHS on the ruling and on the data and on the science.
Well,
So that was a positive
when you talk about this
data
whole
point.
Chevron deference no longer being around, it's curious to see how this rolls out and plays out with this ALJ hearing. Like, this is still very much in the court of law, and we still will see this process. It's just a matter of where it sits right now, does it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's curious to see what'll happen, but I know a lot of people out there are wondering, like, what do we hear as far as rescheduling? It's the only thing that we can say at this point right now, and the conversations that we've had. But as I said as well, the EU, that was a rather interesting eye opener as to what's being developed over there. There was some members at the CB, the International Narcotics Control Board, on a panel yesterday, but there's definitely some older gentlemen that seems like they grew up in the Nancy Reagan era, and they were very and we're going to actually have on a couple of these guests next week. But to their point, they're saying, and that brings up a valid point, there is a big movement on trying to get cannabis looked and changed and viewed in a different way. But when you look at, in the grand scheme of things across the world, there's over 2/3 of the world that still have the same stance towards cannabis. And that's a valid point. But at the end of the day, too, there's a lot of things that have changed over time. Last time I checked, I think there was 98% approval rating of world slavery at one point back
I
in
was
the
just
day.
going to
And
say,
that
I was
changed.
just going to say, I can appreciate the gentleman's perspective, but I could also make the argument that the 2/3 that they're talking about that don't support the
They
use
have
of
no
cannabinoids, they also don't support women's rights. They don't support the women's right to vote. I mean, that gay marriage, you get fucking beheaded in some of those countries.
In
Like,
some of those
they're
countries,
not,
how much of an impact they have on the economic direction
they
and
don't.
research direction of the US, right?
They don't, but they're not with the times. I mean, cannabis is a societal shift. Cannabis is being recognized in modern countries. What I did see that from a lot of the European countries, and this might not be a very popular take, but they were patient first. And when I say patient first, they're patient first in regards to there is a medical doctor that you go to, and not just go to get a card. You go to for them to write you an actual prescription that
Yes,
is taken to a pharmacy, and you are given cannabis that is covered by insurance, or you are given cannabis that in the eyes of the government is seen as a medicine.
correct.
We are not there yet. Could we
You-
get there? I hope so. We talked to organizations such as LeafWell that Marvin Washington's an ambassador of. They're currently doing studies with Aetna and with some insurance carriers around data around cannabis being used as a medicine.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, finish your thought. Finish your thought.
I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Sorry, my apologies. Well, the big thing that I kept hearing it more and more over the 2 days that we were there was there's two different stories in the US that you've got to separate the recreational story from the medical story. And that seems to be what makes this somewhat murky. But more importantly, for doctors to start having a true different look on prescribing this, you said medical first, which is why I think that you're seeing more and more momentum building in the EU. There needs to be an in-depth trial, actual data that proves that this has some
So,
medical benefits, not just an ideology, is what some of the feedback I received.
so I agree with that to an extent, but as soon as you said that, I mean, you have Sativex and you have Epidiolex that are THC analogs that are legitimate medications
Yep.
that are covered by insurance that have helped kids. Yesterday was National Epilepsy Awareness Day. I mean, a lot of I let out with the newsletter this morning talking about Charlotte Figge and how we got here. That shouldn't be forgotten. Cannabis, the momentum that we've seen and the reason why we're here started with cannabis as a pure medicine that is helping patients, that help children with seizures. I don't want to say we've lost our way, but we haven't really seen any innovation or any emphasis truly on cannabinoids since that. And rescheduling is the next step to get us there, because it's going to introduce greater medical research as it relates to cannabinoids. It's going to unlock a lot of things within the industry. That's why a lot of people earlier, we were talking about how.
Do you think, though, outside of the US, though, there could be more clinical trials being done towards this?
There
Knowing you look
are.
at,
Look at Israel.
I know, Israel,
Israel's got
Canada.
clinical trials. Israel's got clinical trials. I'm sure Germany has clinical trials that are going on. We were talking about the French cannabis industry getting launched within the country. There's probably also clinical trials to an extent, I think, going on in the UK. We had the chief medical officer from Curaleaf on a while back, and that's what we were talking to him about. We were talking about indications and therapeutics that cannabinoids can be leveraged towards,
Yeah.
with an emphasis on medical. They're absolutely medical and patient first, and adult use is a nice to have
Well,
as far as they're concerned. And Mark is, the UK does have trials that are going on for certain indications.
Canada as well. They're definitely conducting some
in Canada.
Yeah. One thing's for sure, though, what I do like what the EU's doing, they understand what the roadmap is, and you said it off the top, is that it's all about medical first. And there's some promising numbers, to say the least, as to how that's going to develop in that country. But there's 750 million people in Europe, and being in a room of people from Italy, you name it, for I don't know how many countries.
And the main difference is the federal governments, the government of Germany, the government of France, the government of the UK, they support these industries from a federal standpoint.
Yeah.
They've laid the foundation from a federal point of view. They didn't say, all right, well, certain municipalities want to do this, let's let them kind of figure shit out. That's why we're here. That's why we have hemp proliferating. That's why we haven't really gotten that. That's why we are in the current state that we're in this industry. The governments in the EU backed the industry from day one and set the foundation to not only stabilize it, but also legitimize it and enable it to grow.
What was the conversation we had on the Tuesday night? Gentleman from France that was kind of educating us on some of the latest moves and how this is actually going to be backed and covered by the actual country in this pilot program, if I'm correct.
Yeah, they're taking a true pharmaceutical approach.
Yeah.
To it. And France apparently has zero stigma towards cannabis. It's pretty much seen in the eyes of the public the same as alcohol. So I mean, that's pretty. It was very eye opening the way that the French approach cannabis, which I had no idea.
Yeah. Second Chance Month is going to be a banger. Any news? Well, we're going to find out, but we'll have more on that tomorrow. Marvin Washington, mark it in your calendar. He is a great guest. And like I said, close contacts, CEO of Leafwell as well. But he's a former Super Bowl winner at the Denver Broncos. But what I like about him is that he's a professional athlete that draws big attention, but he's advocating in Washington on behalf of this industry, which we need more of. That's what I really liked about him and what he's trying to accomplish. But he's got a good story to tell. We'll have him on, including we'll start things and kick things off with Zach George from SNDL off the top of the show tomorrow morning at Friday at 11 a.m. But you were going to say something?
He's not the CEO. He's an advisor. For Leafwell.
Thank you for correcting me. All right. I want to get into this now, this interesting topic that you brought off the top. It's the American Rights and Reform PAC, backed by major players like Curaleaf. Their campaign, this video has gone viral, where I understand where they're coming from. With that, I want to bring in our good friend of the podcast, Gretchen Gailey, here on a Thursday. Good to see you. And it was great to see you in person the other day. How are things?
Good. Same as usual. Nice to see the whites of your eyes for once.
I know, right? It was nice weather you guys had in Washington. Check out all those cherry blossom trees too, man. Beautiful.
It's time to be here.
That's for sure.
It's a good time to be here. Summer sucks. You don't want to be here in August.
She's a hot one there, huh? All that concrete. I believe it. So what do you guys make of this video that's been surfacing online right now? And Gretchen, I'll start with you. Like, I understand the angle as to what this PAC group is trying to do on bringing attention. However, I also think too, is it the right message? Because does it leave in some ways that we're fighting amongst each other in this industry? One side, you have a point, but the other side, is it the right messaging and right approach for what they're trying to accomplish?
I will start off with saying that I appreciated the effort. I do agree. I think the messaging completely missed the mark. Honestly, I don't know if the outside world is educated enough to know that it looks like we'd be warring against each other, that you've got medical versus adult use versus hemp. I don't think the real world actually knows any of that. I think it was almost a bless their heart moment. Bless their heart, trying to get into politics. Love it, try it. But I think they just wasted a lot of money, frankly.
Okay.
So I think the messaging, if you're going to go after this administration, Shad, I know you're Canadian, whatever. But I don't care. And I don't think Trump cares. I think you've seen the back and forth over tariffs. Like, are we going to do them? Are we not going to do them? I don't think Canada is the message that really matters to these folks.
No.
I think
it's having an impact. When I drove over to Detroit on Monday night, it was a ghost town. Like the duty-free store at the border, there was 75% of people were laid off. Like it has a huge effect right now that people may not be aware of. But regardless, we're talking about the Canadian companies being listed on senior exchanges. I see you nodding your head. Go ahead.
It was not about the Canadian companies being listed on exchanges.
Well,
I watched both videos, and if you were going to ask AI to create advertisements on cannabis that were political ads that key into what Donald Trump might want to hear, they did that very well. But they said Joe Biden classified cannabis as Schedule 1, analogous to heroin. Joe Biden didn't do that.
Yeah.
Like, that is false. Canadian companies are not wrecking the cannabis industry. That is false as well. They're not exporting cannabis to the United States. What does Trump want to hear, or what do people think Trump wants to hear? Let's blame Biden and throw Biden under the bus. Let's go after the Canadians. Like I said, if you didn't really know what you were talking about and you wanted to create a video that you thought would resonate with Trump or resonate with conservatives, I give them A for effort, a C for messaging. Let's be real in what they're trying to convey. There was a much, much more powerful message that could have been conveyed via those videos, and blaming Biden for S1 and the Canadians for wrecking the industry just doesn't. Gretchen's completely right. It absolutely missed the mark.
Yeah. You know who also thinks that they missed the mark? I'm not going to say any names, but there are some executives on the Canadian side that are pissed about this. And that's the reason why I ask. It's just like, does this make us actually give a black eye on the industry, knowing that how do you supposed to get into a room at a conference and get people to work with each other and support each other off of something like this?
I mean, with all due respect, if I'm a Canadian company, I'm laughing my way to the bank because I've got access to the EU right now, and I've got access to Australia, and I can export my IP and my flower globally. And the MSOs, they're within a box.
Yeah.
There's a reason Boris went and bought an LP, and it's so he can export cannabis to the EU. None of the MSOs can do that. They're stuck within the framework that they're in right now in the United States. That's hyper fragmented, and it's not doing well right now, if we're being completely honest. So I mean, the Canadian CEOs, if I was them, I'd be laughing.
Yeah, it's an ugly play, I think, but it's not like they've done anything wrong. They've got a country that have federally legalized it, and they're allowed to do a lot of the things that they've done. They've done it by the book, and like you said, there's an international opportunity for them. So why attack them on false narratives? That's for sure.
At the same time, though, I do think what we saw today was calculated to compound the effects of what those ads were. You have Matt Gaetz literally just yelling, "Let's reschedule cannabis."
Yeah.
You've got Joe Passo, or whatever the hell his name is, with 3.2 million followers on Twitter. I don't know who gave him the messaging, but he was asking, are you in favor of rescheduling cannabis that would legalize medical marijuana in the United States? That is also a false narrative.
Yeah.
Rescheduling would unlock medical research as it relates to cannabinoids in the United States. But if I'm a conservative, I'm talking to a conservative base, I don't really think linking rescheduling to increased legalization or accessibility of the plant is the right message either, to be completely honest.
I won't be surprised if all Canadian cannabis companies are going to be on the OTC exchange soon. I don't agree with that whatsoever.
They're not going to delist Canadian companies. That would be un-American because there's no precedent to do that.
Yeah.
They operate in a completely legal framework, and they're accessing our capital markets in a completely legal way. Gretchen,
you said wrong message, A for effort, but the messaging was wrong.
I didn't say A for effort. Good effort.
I said A for effort, C for messaging.
Okay, I'll take that back. Good effort, but the messaging wasn't great.
Right.
Saying that, what would you have done? You know, knowing how well-versed you are with Washington and what these people want to hear at the end of the day.
I wouldn't waste my money on a political ad that's running just in DC, hoping that Trump's going to watch it on Fox News and it might hit home with him. I wouldn't have done it at all. And frankly, I think it's a very old-fashioned way of trying to get your message across.
So what would you have done?
I would first, I wouldn't have used that message whatsoever. Frankly, I think you need to be coming at cannabis from more of a national security standpoint. I think you need to be looking at with cartels. I think you need to be looking at dangerous illicit markets out there because it hasn't been legalized. I think if you try and get into the rescheduling efforts, no one understands them. You need to be very simple and you need to be direct and straight to the point. You got Canadian companies, you got him like kissing babies, signing the Right to Try Act, which doesn't exactly apply to us. I mean, there was just a whole lot of bullshit thrown into one 30-second thing. You need to come with one message, paint it direct. I don't know if you remember this years ago. Was it Acreage? I think it was when they came out with those ads right before the Super Bowl.
Correct.
And they had a veterans ad, they had a mom ad, and I forget who the third ad was, where these people told briefly their anecdotal stories. Why did they resonate? Because they came from an emotional standpoint.
Correct.
They could speak to people. It wasn't just some weird, bizarre type of trying political. I just think they totally missed the mark whatsoever. There was no emotional impact behind these things. And frankly, that's what you need to get cannabis done. And I don't think Trump cares about any of this stuff. I think there are different ways to get to him. I think, yes, if it comes across his desk, he'll be all right. I don't think he's going to be proactively fixing things. I think the folks that he has surrounded himself with are not in our camp whatsoever. Yay, Matt Gaetz, woohoo! I don't care. I think he's just pushing more of the traditional. Yes, something really happens, and Republicans are like, no, that didn't happen. Look over here, and it's like, I have eyeballs, and they're like, no. This is great. Rescheduling is going to happen. Yay! Where are you? In what world, Matt Gaetz? I don't think he's tapped in to what's going to go down in Washington. I think it was more to prop up the industry. Like, yes, this is going to keep coming. Yay, go team, go.
Does this campaign or this latest project work if we see another set of ads that come out that actually hit home to what you guys are just outlining right now, which is the emotional side? Does it help in a combination of ads, or?
I think we need to be turning our voters. You need to be turning public sentiment. The public nowadays, hey, is pot legal? Oh yeah, I can go down the street to my shop and get it. Oh, well, that's an illegal shop. What? What do you mean it's illegal? What? It's not tested? What? People do not understand the thousands of problems surrounding this industry and the disparities between the federal and the state laws. They think it's legal. Everyone thinks pot is done and taken care of. American public does not care.
Yeah.
We need to educate them. They don't understand this whatsoever. And frankly, you need that pressure put onto Congress, put onto Trump to understand that this is what people want.
Yeah.
The only time we have seen Trump semi back down in recent weeks is after these town halls, and people are just jumping up and down, mad as shit. And he's like, all right, we're going to dial Elon back a minute. I mean, that's the only thing, a real public outcry and seeing, oh, wait, maybe we did this wrong. But he's still cutting jobs. It's still coming left and right. He's just not jumping down with his chainsaw anymore. So they've reeled him back in a little, but they're still going to do what they want. And frankly, Trump has nobody holding him back whatsoever. He doesn't need to run for re-election again. He can do whatever he wants. He has the wealthiest man behind him. He can primary anybody he wants. He can go after anyone. So Trump can do what he wants to do. So how do we make him care about us?
We were at an event. We did see former Colorado Senator Cory Gardner, and I was asking what his thoughts were. We're hoping to get him on next week or two. And he said, look, Donald Trump is definitely somebody who wants to get this done. However, there are some certain people within his administration that do not. So what I gather from that is that what I said to Anthony off the top, like, how would you perceive that? Is that something more or less he's not going to get away with it, meaning President Trump, and if something comes across his desk, he'll sign off on it? Is that how you should interpret something like that?
I believe so. Frankly, I do think if it comes across his desk, if safe banking made it to his desk, he's not going to get in the way of it. Correct. He's already put out his tweet, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, whenever that was, September, August, supporting safe. So no, I don't think he will get in the way of it. Will he jump up and down on the DEA to reschedule? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. And while we have seen plenty of people talk about HHS has already done their part, like Sebelius is saying. They've done their part. We've pushed forward what we want. Okay, well, Trump is not going to care about what the Biden administration pushed forward. Truly, that's bullshit. Why would he care about what that corrupt agency said, whether they're corrupt or not? If totally, I could see them throwing out the whole HHS report and starting over if he really cared about doing it.
Wow.
That's just me. But I'm a pessimist.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Anthony, we always talk about there's a perception that a lot of the American cannabis companies like to work like siloed approach versus more together as a team. We've talked to Boris the last few months, and he's saying we're now working more closely than we ever have. But when you see something like this come public and you look at this, is this another example that, like, are they working more effectively as a team, or is this just another approach where it just appears that one or two companies are only thinking about themselves amongst the industry and don't necessarily have the right messaging as to what they're trying to convey? I know I'm putting you on.
Want me to do it? I'll do it.
I think. I think that you've got a lot of the industry. I think you've got a lot of the CEOs acting rogue, separate, siloed. I mean, this pack, the only point of correlation you can see with the industry is that Curaleaf, an ex-Curaleaf executive, is the treasurer of it. There's not much else on there. There weren't many other points of correlation to the industry. I think the fact that the message is completely haywire, if USCR or any of the other, or Attach or any of the organizations had influence onto what the message was, you're not getting that shit. Yeah. You're going to get a cohesive message, and you're going to get something that actually makes sense.
Oh, now I'm going to say bless your heart to you that you think those organizations can put together a cohesive message. Are you?
But they fundamentally understand what's going on more than that.
That's Brian Lanza written all over it all day and all night.
So
that's
Kim last night. What did Kim tweet last night? Where was it? Results don't come from being the loudest; they come from doing the work.
Bullshit. Have you seen America? Every day, it's the minority that jumps up and down and screams the loudest. That's who cares. It's the.
I think rescheduling is done. If I'm being completely, I think rescheduling is done. If I'm being completely honest, and it's a function of when they say, "Hey, we're going to do it." It's timing.
You think
that's
Pam
my
Bond
opinion.
is like, when can I assign this into fix it all up? Because that's the only way it's getting done.
100%.
If it goes through the actual process, it's going to go up through appeal after appeal after appeal. And I think you're going to need Donald J. Trump to say, Pam Bondi, sign off on this today.
That's what needs to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's a priority enough.
Can I put?
I'm not saying it's a priority. I'm not saying it's a priority at all.
All right. When's it happen?
What?
When?
I have no idea. I'm not even going to start to say that, but I think it's done, and it's going to be a function of they either launch it going into the midterms in 2026, or you see it drop sometime this year. But I think rescheduling is baked and finished. It's just a function of timing.
I think you can't wait that long. You can't wait until the midterms, or you're going to get bogged down in so much other stuff. And for JT out there who thinks I'm a hater, I'm a realist, JT. I have lived in this city for over 20 years, and I know how they operate. And to think that anyone here does anything because it's the right thing to do, you're out of your damn mind. And you've clearly never been to Washington. These people only care about what's going to make them money and what's going to make them popular and keep them in office. Yeah. That's what matters. You want to send a message to Trump? How can he make money off this industry? That's how you're going to get this done.
Yep.
I mean, there's money to be made off the, there is money.
For Trump. Money in Trump's pocket.
So when I look at, we talked about this actually earlier today, Gretchen, about political power. And is this something that President Trump would want to burn any political power leading before the actual midterm elections? Or does he want to leverage this into midterms elections? And you basically hinted to me like he's not getting reelected. He isn't himself, but obviously he wants the Senate to be still controlled by Republicans. But you're suggesting that this can't wait until the midterms because this will just get bogged down with other stuff that's more important leading up to that, kind of like what we're going through right now in the first 100 days.
Yeah, frankly, I think 2 years or really a year and a half away. It's hard to say exactly what's going to be going on and the priorities that will be happening. But I think, like I said, Trump is not up for re-election. Anyone else that comes against them in the midterms, Elon's just going to whip out his checkbook and he is going to primary the hell out of anybody they want.
So isn't there a congressional race right now in Pennsylvania that's getting flipped, or it looks like a Democrat's actually going to dethrone a Republican?
Are you saying in the state assembly?
Yeah, hold on. I was reading about it last night.
I'm not quite sure, but I don't think in the state assembly that it's going to change whatsoever.
So how can
it's still going to be like one seat? I'm pretty sure it's a state race.
Tom Angelo just wrote, I think that was a state legislative race.
But I still think
it's a state race. I was reading it. It was Scott Pressler that I was reading his Twitter last night.
Yeah. But
where's RFK fit in all this whole scenario?
Nowhere.
He doesn't. His job's done. Zero influence.
No influence whatsoever. I know this is a legislative aspect, but you don't think anything that he could recommend where we step back and look at things differently? There's nothing that he could provide that would have any influence whatsoever.
Not unless Gretchen's correct and Trump says, scrap the HHS report, give me a new one, and deschedule the damn thing altogether.
Okay.
I think RFK did his job when he gave all of his voters to Donald Trump in the election. That's all he was brought in to be secretary for, not to actually make any change. Are you kidding me? No.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask the question too, like, look, if this does get pushed out, like you said that you think rescheduling is like, I was going to push back on you a little bit there, Anthony. What makes you believe that it's done right now? I'm not disagreeing with you whatsoever, that you feel confidently that it's a done deal.
What makes me believe it's done? It's what I think. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to start to speculate.
So if this
what makes you think that, where's rescheduling going, Shad?
I will, and I will back up Anthony in that I do think if it's going to happen, rescheduling is definitely going to be a rigged game. It's going to happen. I don't think the DEA is going to be on board with it. I think it's going to take a lot of elbow bending and arm breaking from Trump to get done what he wants, because people like Terrence Cole are not on board with this. So they're going to have to do a big old roundabout, and they're going to have to push this through.
I've been conveying the message over the last 2 to 3 months that don't focus so much on his administration. It's more about what Donald Trump wants. And when I was in Washington this week, it was just some things I started to hear and learn that, yeah, he wants to get this done. If he could do it, he'd get it done. So I'm like, well, and that's the case, why doesn't he get it done? And that's just it. That's the number.
And it's not to say that he totally
doesn't. But I will say it's to Anthony's point, it's the first 100-day thing.
Sure. Yeah. He's just got a lot of other stuff on his plate.
Let's retable this. In fact, we probably would.
Yeah. All the Mercedes, BMWs, and Audis are about to go through the roof in terms of pricing, thanks to his tariffs.
Yeah. Well, I think probably the smart thing for Anthony and I to do is go back to Washington after those first 100 days and find out where he sits once. I like to think the first 100
We're going to get a meeting. We're going to get a meeting with Trump.
No, but I'm just saying you start to have more conversations with the appropriate people and see where things sit. But let's not kid ourselves. These first 100 days, these are some wholesale changes as to what's going on. And this first 100 days could turn into 200 or 300 first days. But yeah, I know cannabis is obviously not a priority right now. But in some ways, next month, hopefully we start to see some good PR, so to speak, on behalf of the industry, knowing that I think when you look at some of the people that are at play here and some of the guests that we've had on in the past with Weldon Angelos and what's being branded as far as that, what's it called again? Second chance month.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have we tried tracking down Nancy Mace. We actually stopped by her office.
Yeah, people keep bombarding me on Twitter. We are not the gatekeepers for Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace gives us her time and has been gracious with her time in the past. I don't have a direct line that I could be like, hey, Nancy, why aren't you talking about cannabis? If she wants to surface and talk about cannabis, she's going to surface and talk about cannabis. But we don't control what she says in any way, nor do we have like a relationship with her like that. So let's just be real for a second.
Here's some business cards, people, that we picked up. We actually went into Senator Schumer's office. Who are you? Who am I? I'm Shad Dales from the Dales Report. I'd like to speak with the former Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and talk about cannabis. Yeah, he'll be right out. That doesn't work that way.
And frankly, to all your people who think that you're the gatekeeper to Nancy, they have just as much access to her as you do. Get your ass to Washington and walk in the woman's door and start asking questions.
Yeah.
You're allowed.
I get blown up on tweets like, "Where's Nancy? Why is Nancy gone quiet?" I've got no idea.
Yeah.
I've got just as much insight into that as you do.
Yeah.
I did see Senator Tuberville in the hallways, and I tried to place a $10 bet on Michigan beating Auburn tomorrow night, but he had to run. But he said, I'll take up on that offer if we run into each other a little bit later on. But you can obviously understand who he was cheering for. But that's the cool thing about these buildings is that you can just walk around. You can see all the biggest names that you see on television right in front of you. These are public figures. So as much as we're there.
Did you guys also talk to Byron Donalds?
We did actually. We saw Byron Donalds when he was walking into the Longworth building. Had a good talk with him. He was amenable to following up. I said I'd look forward to him going into the gubernatorial race in Florida for 26. Hopefully we get him on and he follows up with us. But yeah, we literally walked right past him. He stood there and talked to us for a couple minutes and we were on our way.
Yeah.
Does that mean you have high hopes for Florida, Anthony? No pun intended.
I don't have high hopes, or I can't speak on his behalf as to how I think he would fall on cannabis, but I don't think he would go to the lengths that Governor DeSantis has gone to. I think if we get Casey in the or Mrs. DeSantis into the office in 2026, it's going to be a problem because she's going to be a proxy for Ron. I think Ron is doing the same thing as Trump, which he jokes about going in a third term. Somehow in 2028, Ron doesn't want to leave the office or come to terms that there's term limits in the state of Florida. I'm glad there's term limits in the state of Florida so we can get someone fresh in there.
Yeah.
But I've said it before and I'll say it again. If it's Casey DeSantis versus Byron Donalds, I will literally go campaign for Byron Donalds, raise money for Byron Donalds to be the governor of the state of Florida. It can't be a DeSantis proxy moving forward. Otherwise, adult use cannabis in this state is never going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's not my most important issue. I care more about the welfare of the state of Florida versus, let's say, adult use cannabis. But it ain't never getting done if there's a proxy for Ron sitting in Tallahassee.
I spoke to a few members today, part of a group. It's called the Alder members, and they were actually at an event. It's a very exclusive group at an event in September, and they were with Congressman Donalds, and they honestly have said, like, out of all the politicians they've ever met, we've never come across someone who's just down to earth, approachable, nicest person you'll ever meet, who's very smart and has a lot of upside potential. So, Anthony, to your point, we ran into him and it was just like, he was one of our buddies. Like, he was just no attitude, he was just a very down to earth person that made time. And, you just felt very relaxed in yourself when you were talking to him. So, nothing but the best.
He's got Trump's stamp of approval. I don't know how far that's going to go in the next couple of years. Let's see how Trump's policies work, but it's a pretty big stamp in the state of Florida.
Well, let's not kid her. Yeah, Melania, 2028, David Benz. That's hilarious. But yeah, well, if anything, an endorsement from Mr. Donald J. Trump definitely puts you on the map, and I think that's what's helped him tremendously in his name the last couple of months. So, all the best to Congressman Donalds, and his whole approach towards being potentially the next governor of the state of Florida. I think that wraps up everything for now, around the 40-minute mark. But any questions that anybody wants to ask right now, feel free to reach out with Anthony and Gretchen on. Hopefully that gives you kind of an update of what our trip was and what we saw and heard with regards to rescheduling. And then more importantly, just the EU market right now. And the big sentiment there, like we said before, the U.S. has got to get something going or they're going to be left behind because, like you said, Anthony, medical first. They got a clear, definitive message that's going through. Countries are getting behind it, and you're seeing rapid growths in countries like Germany. And you're even seeing former Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan executives, Stamp McLean and Will Muki, that were on last week with us. There's reasons why they moved to Europe, and they see true opportunity there because there's enough of the saga or the drama that's going on here in the U.S., but they see huge upside potential that's going on overseas. So, You're either A, going to have to get in front of this and be the global leader of research in cannabinoids, or B, you're going to hand this multi-billion-dollar research industry over to another country. And that's probably another angle that might kind of hit the Trump administration. That would be helpful, don't you think?
Yeah.
But anyway, Gretchen, appreciate you logging on here today. And I learned something new this week. I didn't realize that Pittsburgh is now a big tech market.
Yes.
Was not aware of that.
Yes, bunch of tech folks there. Carnegie Mellon really drives the tech in Pittsburgh. They've done a lot with the autonomous vehicles and all that junk came out of there.
I thought it was very industrial. And she's like, Shad, no, like the whole industrial side of Pittsburgh has been changed for probably 2 decades, you said?
No, since the 70s.
Oh.
Yeah. When they shut down the steel mills and sent them all to China. Everyone loves China. But I do want to address some comments here because people keep asking us about hemp. And I think that's something we absolutely need to pay attention to.
Good point.
The Farm Bill does run out in September, people. So either they do another extension, which I don't think is probably the best move. I don't think they will. I think they will address it. And so I think hemp industry is something that needs to wake up and start also getting their butts to Washington. I understand that everyone thinks it's going to stay status quo. I do not hear that.
No, it's not.
When you got states like Texas trying to ban hemp, and if that goes down in the next few months, that's going to have a major chilling effect on the Farm Bill. People need to care. So 100% this industry needs to wake up and start looking at cannabis and hemp together. And I know they're two crazy warring factions, but frankly, they're already lumped together.
Yeah, they are.
You have bad players in hemp sending product all over the place, or they're lacing it with this or that, and somebody's testing it for hot stuff. And then they just immediately conflate that with the cannabis industry, and that we're all criminals and nutballs. So we really got to go after bad actors.
Correct. And you've got prominent people in the cannabis industry calling people that are against hemp prohibitionist, which, to be completely honest, I think is bullshit. That's complete and utter bullshit.
Dan Conformer, we're going to talk about hashtag Smoke Shopgate. You've had some great stuff that you've brought up online. Irish writes, when does Texas House vote? Senate voted, but House needs to vote as well, correct?
It just went to a committee yesterday in the House, so it'll still be a minute. But the Texas legislature ends on June 2nd, so something's going to happen.
Next.
But also, Dan Patrick came out, I think it's today in the Tribune, basically saying he wants a special session if they don't kill it in this session. So we'll see. He doesn't have the power to do that, but he can allow the governor to do it.
What JS, right? Sorry. Next House spending bill is inserting anti-hemp agenda. Good to know.
Spending bill? You mean the Farm Bill?
I don't know what he means by that. Raging Gun writes, Pittsburgh has not much except a hockey team. They also got a pretty good.
Whoa!
They also got a pretty good football team that hasn't.
Panthers beat their hockey team on Monday. Fun fact.
Well, the hockey team's not doing so great this year.
We needed to get a confidence win and beat up on the Pens.
That would have been worth something 10 years ago, but sadly, the Pittsburgh Penguins with Sidney Crosby is not the same anymore. Mario is the king of Pittsburgh. So is probably Terry Bradshaw.
Wait, you think Mario is bigger than Sid?
Yes. 1,000%. Are you kidding me? As in legend status?
But yeah. Mario Lemieux just, but then again, I'm starting to sound like my dad, where I'm like, oh, the previous generation.
This is now going to spiral into MJ versus LeBron.
Could go on that. I like his interview with Pat McAfee, basically saying they don't really have much relationship. When I heard that, it basically says Michael does not have time for LeBron.
What does Michael care? Michael's golfing. And
exactly.
Being happy.
Michael doesn't care, but LeBron does.
He does.
Anyway. Okay. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have Marvin Washington on again. Phenomenal person that will shed some light on, like I said, some of the stuff that's going to be hopefully taking place next month. I think you'll find that interesting, people, because pay attention to what we could see in Second Chance Month with just some of the positive momentum that's developing and how Trump may be viewing this. Because if he's got a close relationship, let's say, for example, with Weldon Angelos, Weldon, as he was on last month with us, Anthony, and some of the feedback that he provided based on conversations that he's had with President Trump. It's always good to get dialogue and how he views things from behind the scenes. And as well, the big one, Zach George, CEO of SNDL, will be on as well. And we're going to talk about anything and everything, all gloves come off, including that 5.4% share ownership of High Tide, why they did that and what it means moving forward. So yes, we have talked about that with Zach, and he's more than welcome to address that. So buckle in, should be a great one. We'll kick things off with him, followed by Marvin afterwards. In the meantime, Gretchen and Anthony, appreciate that you guys log on here today, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.